Our county board proceedings will now come to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisor Locke with the invocation.
We seek your help with decisions today. Bless this meeting with your divine intelligence and help us to make the best use of our own. Thank you for being our source of guidance. Amen.
Amen. Supervisor Robel.
Adopted agenda with one change. Way down below where it says presentation of 2016 Wisconsin Key Award by Kayla Oberstad, 4-H Youth Development Education. That will go right after we adopt the budget. Aye.
I am proud to stand before you tonight to represent 4-H. Winnebago County is comprised of 20 4-H clubs from across the county, spanning from Neenah to Winneconne to Utica to Pickett and reaching families in all areas in between. My name is Kayla Oberstadt, and I am proud to serve as the Winnebago County 4-H Youth Development Educator, and I also serve the communities of Winnebago County, as well as completing my role as an educator for the University of Wisconsin Extension Service. With me tonight is Sarah Thompson, Winnebago County 4-H Youth and Science Educator, and together we are honored to recognize 4 outstanding young people from Winnebago County this evening. These members include Key Award recipients of Stephanie Beck, TJ Beck, Julia Boehm, and Casey Bueller. I'd like to invite Stephanie Beck forward, who is here to accept her Key Award this evening. The prestigious Key Award, one of the highest recognitions a 4-H member can receive, honors a select group of 4-H participants annually, which includes only 2% of 4-H membership. The youth receiving this award are ones who have demonstrated consistent growth in their 4-H involvement, developed and applied their leadership skills, and actively participated in their club and their community. At the Winnebago County Fair, each of our recipients were recognized with a certificate and a pin in front of their leaders and peers in 4-H. Today, we'll have Stephanie representing Winnebago County, as the other 3 are off either with school or other work obligations, to receive their recognition from the Winnebago County Board. We have the following certificate to read off. Winnebago County, Wisconsin Commendation of Stephanie Beck. Whereas Stephanie has achieved the highest award in 4-H youth development, that being the Wisconsin Key Award. And whereas the 4-H youth development program promotes the ideals of character, conduct, patriotism, and service, encouraging members to become productive and contributing citizens. And whereas Stephanie, a 4-H member, represents our country's greatest resource, that being our youth. And whereas Stephanie continues the legacy of 4-H youth development in the United States and serves as a role model for young 4-H members. And whereas Stephanie serves as an inspiration to all of us, demonstrating that hard work and perseverance can make dreams come true. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that Wisconsin 4-H Key Award recipient Stephanie Beck be commended for her achievement of 4-H Youth Development's highest award. This is signed by David Albrecht, Winnebago County Board Chairman, and Susan Ertmer, Winnebago County Clerk, dated this 20th day of September 2016. Please join me in a round of applause. I'd like to invite Stephanie to say a few words on 4-H, and then I will share a few of the accolades of the other three who are not here this evening.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I have been a member of the Winnebago County 4-H program for 12 years. I am a senior at Lourdes Academy this year, and I would just like to say thank you for the 4-H program itself and the county for supporting it. 4-H has taught myself many lessons, from leadership to speaking in front of crowds to the different interests I like and what I would like to study in the future for college. I was a Cloverbud at age 6, and I attended many camps, and I learned how to public speak through them and make lots of different friends. I've attended many trips on the national level, including Atlanta, Georgia, and DC. And in January, I will be attending the 2017 presidential inauguration, so I'm pretty excited for that. And in conclusion, I would like to thank my parents and Kayla and Sarah for giving me the award and the Winnebago County 4-H program. Thank you.
I'd like to just share a few words on behalf of our other three members so they can have their recognitions shared with the county as well. Julia Boehm is from Winneconne and has been a member of the Westward 4-H Club for 9 years. In her club, she has been involved as a youth dairy leader and has participated in multiple 4-H projects, including dairy, swine, crops, shooting sports, photography, and more. She has participated in the 4-H Interstate Exchange, which has allowed her to travel across the country and host 4-H members from other states. Through 4-H, Julia cites, "The skills I have learned through 4-H are some that I will use for the rest of my life. First off, having the opportunity to show animals at the fair has taught me responsibility, reliability, and hard work. Besides showing animals, I have enhanced my public speaking skills by giving speeches at monthly 4-H meetings." Please let's give a round of applause for Julia Boehm. Casey Bueller is from Omro and has completed 13 years of being a 4-H member in the Poigan Go-Getters 4-H Club. She has been active in the horse and pony and dog projects through 4-H. In her club, Casey was often involved in local community service activities and served as vice president of her club. In the county, she has been a youth leader and exhibited at the county fair, as well as being recognized for top record books and high achievements in the dog project. Casey reports, "I personally feel that 4-H provides an environment for all youth to belong to. There are so many different clubs in our county that kids can choose which one works best for themselves and their family. 4-H is so much more than animals and showing at the fair. It is about friends and lifelong memories, opportunities to travel throughout the country, and so much more." Let's applaud Casey Bueller. Our fourth recipient of the Key Award this year is TJ Beck. He has completed 12 years as a 4-H member in the Golden Oak 4-H Club. He is currently in college and unable to attend this evening. Locally, you could find TJ highly involved in his 4-H projects of swine, woodworking, foods and nutrition, and photography. He has been active in community service within his 4-H club and served as a 4-H club officer. TJ shares, "As I have grown throughout my years in 4-H, it has allowed me to become an active leader in my club. It has taught me skills such as developing public speaking, working in group situations, delegating jobs and projects, and listening skills. All of these skills are part of what makes up me as a person. I have taken these skills and have integrated them into my life to better use them to their full advantage." Let's give TJ a round of applause. Lastly, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to present earlier in the meeting. We do have a 4-H Leaders Board meeting this evening, so thank you for that. I'd like to thank the Winnebago County Board and extended population for their support of the work that UW Extension does throughout the year in our county, which includes 4-H youth development. Thank you for your time in helping us recognize our successful young people. In addition, I'd like to thank the Wisconsin Farm Bureau and Rural Mutual Insurance Company, who sponsor the Wisconsin 4-H Key Award program. Again, thank you all for your time this evening, and congratulations once more to Stephanie, TJ, Julia, and Casey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The Highway Commissioner will be given a presentation on CB this evening on what the engineer had come up with for some studies. But in order for the public to speak on that, we're going to have to suspend the rules 6.5 to let the people, if somebody in the public wants to speak on CB intersections. So I would like to move that we suspend the rules.
You can't do that. Unless you change your rules, you can't do it. But you don't have. Your rules are such, and we went through this when the racetrack people were here. Your rules are such that you cannot. You need to have a motion on the agenda to suspend your rules if you're going to allow people to speak with regard to something.
Okay.
Now, it's on the agenda, is that correct?
Yes.
So you don't really, if it's on the agenda for tonight's meeting,
Yes.
you don't need to suspend your rules. Any resolution that's on the agenda or anything.
But
that's on-
6.5 of our rules says that somebody that gives a presentation can't talk. There's no discussion on it.
Oh, is that what it says?
Yes.
Okay, well then you, if
Okay,
that's,
we'll let it go.
yeah, I mean, you have to have the motion on there to suspend your rules, otherwise it's not fair to everybody that,
Okay.
okay? What you have in your agenda is, I'm sorry, your rules say that you can only speak on subjects that are on the agenda. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the board on anything on the agenda this evening? Now is your time to talk. Is there anybody from the public? Okay, we need your name and address.
Again, hello, this is on. All right, hi, my name is John Damo, 455 Zarling Avenue. I came here today, I wanted to talk about the $1.4 million that we spent 19 years ago, passed 31-6, investment of the taxpayers. I see a nice letter in there, so I'm not going to waste your time. I was going to talk about the pitfalls of Waterfest and the risks that we have there, but I also see a nice letter on that, so I'm not going to waste your time. I was going to talk about the economic impact that the racetrack has, but I see a lot of people here that are probably going to do that for me. So again, I'm not going to waste your time. As a lot of you came into the room, it brought back memories last time that I was here, and there was a really good discussion. And I just want to let you know that I don't fault you for not passing the resolution last time. It seemed one-sided, listening to your conversation. It did. I probably, sitting in your chair, wouldn't have voted for it as it stood either. However, tonight's resolution is more about a second chance. I've had the time now, a month, to talk to people in the community and talk to Jeff and Larry and kind of give them game plans of how to raise revenue to make sure that the contract of $23,000 is obtainable through sponsorships at a national level and other business plans that would make it work. Because the county shouldn't lose money. I agree with that. It should be successful for everybody along the lines. But one thing stood out last time that I wanted to make clear. There was a reference to tenant versus landlord. And I agree with you 100% that the tenant needs to listen to the landlord. But I will remind you what America is about. We are the landlord. These people are the landlord. You are our building managers. We ask you and elect you to look out for the best interest of us. But we are the ones that foot the bill for that $1.4 million racetrack. We are the ones that are showing up in numbers 2 months now to let you know, please, don't take down the racetrack. Now, Life Fest is very valuable to me. I want it here too. Even though I can't vend there as a local restaurant, I've tried. I have to donate food to be able to get in there, but vending for local restaurants has been closed for years. So my economic impact, personally, as a restaurant that's 1.5 miles down the road, is bigger from these guys that come in than it is from that week. Now, I'm not discrediting LifeVest. It's a valuable asset to our community. But by your own arguments last month, they are growing and growing exponentially. And the tract of land that the racetrack is on is not a long-term solution for that. We need to find a compromise that has both. We need to look at clearing out some other land or maybe purchasing some other land to make LifeVest more valuable. At the same time, keeping your constituents happy, the ones that live in Winnebago County, the ones that footed the bill for the racetrack. So I kindly remind you to remember who is the landlord in this case. Thank you.
We'll try to keep our comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody else that, yes, go ahead, state your name and address.
My name is Harriet Martin, 918 Leeward Court in Oshkosh. In 1999, my daughter called to tell me that my granddaughter had just been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. I thought that that was the most devastating call I would ever receive. But I was wrong. On March 4th of this year, the call that Moriah had died in a car accident at CB in Oak Ridge Road was the worst. Since that dreadful call about my granddaughter in 1999, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has continuously worked to improve the quality of life and life expectancy for all CF persons. My granddaughter's life expectancy has gone from 19 to 30. Since Mariah's death, we have made small changes to her intersection. The time has come for us to make a major improvement at the CB Oakwood Ridge Road. Changes that will extend the life expectancy of anyone driving through that intersection from 19 to 90. Please do not stop trying to improve Mariah's intersection. Please don't let another family be called with the news of a loved one's death. 3 is more than enough. Vote to create a roundabout at CF and Oakwood Road.
Thank you. Yes, state your name and
Chris
address.
Mack, 1000 Grand Ave, here in Oshkosh. Standard 3 minutes, I'll just read this. The intersection at CB and Oak Ridge is flawed. It's a combination of design, topography, and coupled with higher and higher usage. This is clear from the control evaluation study that was presented to this body on August 22nd. When something is flawed or has a defect in the design, it is in our very nature to try and correct it. Sometimes it takes a little while to correct the flaw, and at a very large cost in not only credibility but in dollars, as GM found out by their delay in fixing the ignition defect that was in their cars. Clearly the defect in CB and Oak Ridge is not on the same scope or level the GM one was, but it is just as tragic. This intersection is not quite 17 years old, yet the traffic patterns have changed substantially in that time, with more and more citizens using this intersection daily. On average, there is an accident at CB and Oak Ridge every 71 days. Think about that. On average, there is an accident every 71 days. And in 2004, 2007, and earlier this year, citizens have lost their lives at CB and Oak Ridge. It is with a heavy heart tonight in my mind, her friends, her family, and supporters that I appeal to you to pass this resolution and put in a roundabout to replace this flawed intersection. Although the control evaluation study indicated there would be about a 16% increase in total crashes, it makes note that these are minor fender benders and there would be a 50% reduction in severe and fatal crashes. A 50% reduction in severe and fatal crashes is a simple choice. Who could reasonably reject a 50% reduction? As a fellow citizen of Winnebago County, of the Fox Valley, it just makes sense that we would turn this intersection into a roundabout, not only for the short-term efficiency of traffic, but for the long-term safety of our growing community. If any one of us here were to build a home and days after we took possession found a defect or a flaw, we would be on the phone to the contractor to come and fix it. CB and Oak Ridge is a flawed intersection, and I ask you all to vote yes to pass this resolution along to the next step in the process of correcting that flaw. If you have voted no before, I ask you to please reconsider and change your vote to yes. It is the right thing to do for the citizens of our community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't let anybody talk more on the CB interchange for the simple reason it's not on the agenda, and the same thing happened to the racetrack people a month ago or so. But it isn't stated, and our county board rules state that anything from on a presentation, you can't, it's not debatable on our board floor. So I was advised I couldn't suspend the rules to do it, so I'm sorry I can't take any more comments on the racetrack. I mean on CB. Do you want about the racetrack?
I am going to speak on the intersection.
Okay, I can't take that because we don't have it on the agenda.
But I thought I just heard you say if it's on the agenda for a presentation.
No.
Did I misunderstand you?
It's not on the, we can't speak, Corporation Counsel, would you explain it? Our county board rules state.
The county board rules state that the public may only speak on resolutions or ordinances that are on the agenda. This isn't a resolution or ordinance, it's just a presentation.
But it is on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, but it's not a resolution or an ordinance. And if
They're not going to be voting on anything.
And if you look at the very top of the agenda, where it talks about people speaking, it says, let me finish.
Counsel, I totally understand where you're going with that.
I mean,
and the chair, I respect your definition of this, and I respectfully request everybody else to understand that Town of Neenah is very concerned about this intersection.
Thank you.
My name is Jessica Farrow, and I will not speak of this, but I am here because I wanted to speak about this. But it pretty much makes me sick that we cannot discuss this subject, which we were all in support of. To come here, we prepared ourselves. How can we not be upset and offended? And I get the laws, but how many times are we going to come here and waste our time now for nothing? And I get to watch this presentation because it's on the courthouse minutes today, but it could be another day. Then we could actually say something. Thank you.
Thank you. It is for a presentation, and the presentation is to give the highway commissioner and the engineer that was doing a study on it to give a report on it. So we hope that it'll help give you some information on the situation. Is there anybody that would like to speak on anything else on the agenda this evening?
I would like to speak on the racetrack. My name is Kelly Basie. I apologize for my attire. I've been cleaning the yard all day. I have an inspection tomorrow. I have 4 children. I am a resident and taxpayer of Winnebago County. I am employed as a union stagehand for 15 years. I am a registered Democrat. I like the idea the Democrats are fiscally responsible. I just heard on the radio that Mark Harris is fiscally responsible.
I can't take any that type of presentation here. I'm sorry.
I do set up for Life Fest, Water Fest, Country and Rock USA. I work the Resch Center, Widener Center. I do the stage and wardrobe for Broadway's at the PAC. There's a large cost for each event. I believe there are plenty of venues for this type of entertainment, and I'm wondering, is it true the track cost $1.5 million of the taxpayers' money to build? As a Democrat voter, I don't think it's a good idea to close the racetrack because it is a moneymaker.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on anything on the agenda this evening? Is there anybody else that would like to speak on anything on the agenda this evening?
My name is Jeff Lemish, 2230 Plymouth Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I would like to start off by thanking you for allowing us, Impact Motorsports, to promote the county-owned racetrack for the past 11 years. There have been some highs as well as some lows. The highs heavily outweighed the lows. Larry and I have a huge passion for racing and the Oshkosh Speed-Zone Raceway. We mean that in every sense of the word. Passion is described as a very strong emotion, compelling enthusiasm, or desire for something. We fully admit that our passion has gotten the better of us through these embattled times. We took over the track in 2006 and started with nothing except our passion. We have grown the business to what it is today. The Oshkosh Speed Zone is one of the top facilities in the nation. Unfortunately, this doesn't always translate to more money. That being said, we never missed a payment to the county or any other vendor or driver. In fact, Impact Motorsports is debt-free and owns most of the track equipment. The only equipment we do not own is the tractor and the grader, and that is owned by Mike Robbie Trucking. If we were awarded the contract for the next few years, we are prepared to purchase this equipment to grade the track ourselves, thus saving the company money. We then intend to hire a full-time professional marketing company to bring in some national sponsorships, which will translate to more money that would allow us to do better advertising to bring more spectators to the track and bring more money, more revenue back to Winnebago County and the city of Oshkosh. Okay. We may not always make the right decisions or say the right things. Our intentions have always been for the best of the interests of the track, racers, fans, county, and Impact Motorsports. We apologize for anything we may have said or done over the years. At these times, our passion may have caused our actions, but please remember, our intentions have always been for the best. We are optimistically looking forward to the future and making the Oshkosh Speed Zone Raceway the top track in the United States. I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for allowing us to do so. Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to speak on
anything? I just wish that you hope and think about what you're going to do because, like I said, I used to go racing when I was younger, when Leo Galicia had it and all that. And, you know, it's remarking when you go out there. I enjoy it, especially when they have these special races and stuff. And just think of it. Sure, there's ups and downs, but it happens with everything.
We have a number of disallowance of claims, or notices of claims, rather. The first one comes from Karen Hottinger for damage to her vehicle caused by a buckle in Highway 45 when it was on a very hot day, referred to the Personnel and Finance Committee. A claim from Patrick Hansen for tar removal from his vehicle that was caused when he drove on Highway 45 when it was under construction, referred to Personnel and Finance. A notice of claim from David G. Madell Jr. for damage to his car's windshield caused by debris coming off the back of a county truck, referred to Personnel and Finance.
We have a notice of claim from Brian Huey for damage to his car's windshield caused by loose blacktop on Highway 45, referred to Personnel and Finance. And one other notice of claim from Mark Kaufman requesting reimbursement for charges involved with vehicle rental after his car was involved with an accident with a county vehicle, referred to Personnel and Finance. We have a petition for zoning amendment from Oshkosh Realty Corporation in the town of Nakaimai, requesting a zoning change from A2 to R1 for a single-family residence, referred to Planning and Zoning. And a petition for zoning amendment from Michael S. Yingling in the town of Wolf River, requesting a zoning change from R1 with wetland to R1 without wetlands for residential purposes and a garage, referred to Planning and Zoning. And then you did receive one resolution from Richland County. It's their resolution opposing the UW Cooperative Extension Reorganization Plan. This is referred to the Legislative Committee. And that's all.
Due to the circumstances, I can't find you because mine went off. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to inform the body that the Land Conservation Committee of this county will be holding a public hearing to accept public comment on Chapter 13 of the Livestock Waste Management Ordinance. This meeting will be held on September 26th, 7 p.m. at the Vinland Town Hall. If you have time, please attend. Obviously, it's an important ordinance and affects many of our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There will be no legislative meeting this month again, due that quite a few of the committee chair will be at a meeting, and also a lot of the legislative will be out campaigning.
Okay, are there any other committees or commissions that would like to? County Executives Report. I'm sorry, report approval of proceedings from August 16th, 2016 meeting. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. County Executives Report.
As is my custom, I typically talk on a couple items that are on the agenda to draw the board's attention to them. One such item for tonight is Resolution 050-92016. It's an appropriation of $4.2 million to a capital project to reconstruct County Trunk A from Indian Point Road North to County Highway GG in the town of Vinland. I just want to draw the board's attention to the fact that there has been a grant awarded of $3.3 million from the state of Wisconsin if we proceed with this project, so that there is a significant state contribution that shouldn't be ignored when making the decision about this appropriation. A second item of interest I'd like to comment on is a little more complicated. I certainly never doubted the sincerity of the operators of the track, their intention to build up the business, and I know they poured their hearts into that. But I would ask the board not to pass a resolution 054-92016 as written. We are in the process of negotiating with LifeFest on a permanent stage. And I believe a permanent stage would probably lock in LifeFest for a long-term contract, probably 10 years. The economic impact of LifeFest is significantly greater than the impact of the raceway. And it's also a profitable operation for the county. And it wasn't that long ago that this board directed the park director to seek revenues from their operations that would cover their costs. We have not been able to cover our costs from the raceway and have not been able to for years and years. What we could do, however, because we're not far enough along in the process with Life Fest, to have a permanent stage built in that area, have all the details worked out, we could extend Impact Motorsports' contract by 1 year, but I would recommend only 1 year, and that's something that I can do as county executive without bringing it to a board vote. But I would not enter into a multi-year contract with them because the true cost is the opportunity cost of being able to lock in Life Fest for the long term, and also being able to have a permanent stage that could be used for other purposes, such as the county fair or events that would actually be profitable to the county. So I'd ask the board not to support this resolution as written, but to allow me to enter into a 1-year contract with Impact Motorsports, if they're interested, under the terms that had been discussed previously for a multi-year contract. That would give them more time for them to make a transition to a new location, if that's what they chose to do, and to find out if they could in fact pay the $22,000 that we had requested. And again, I want to remind the audience that it was Impact Motorsports that broke off the negotiations, indicated they would not pay that amount, and that they were leaving. But clearly, their real intent was to stay, and they hoped to pay a lesser amount. I think it was intended to be a bargaining process and not a final conclusion to their operations. And so we could give them a do-over that gave them 1 more year, but I think it would be a serious mistake to lock the county in to a position that would go beyond 1 year that might in fact jeopardize a significantly more profitable entertainment on that location, as well as one that's very profitable and has a significant impact economically on the community, far beyond what the raceway has. That's my only comments on the agenda. I do have some appointments. I have some reappointments to the Aging and Disability Resource Center Committee. Deb Hogue, Donna Laurie, Harold Singstock, and Claire Steiger.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
I have one appointment to the Mississippi Valley Health Services Commission and Marsh County Health Alliance. These are meetings that are done by telephone, and I'd like to appoint Mike Norton to that position for a 2-year term, which expires June 30th, 2018.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Well, the only thing I have to report, the executive worked on his budget. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Supervisor Shirk.
I think I'm after, well, okay. How much, do we have an estimate for a permanent stage?
We're still working out on the details on that, and remember, there's 2 possibilities. One possibility is that Life Fest actually finds sponsors, and that they construct the stage, and that they initially own it, but that we have agreements with them on our use for it. It's a very complicated process, but it can be done.
Okay, and we've been able to do both because we build a temporary stage for Life Fest?
In the past, there's been a temporary stage, one that wouldn't stay up, and it would be put up for the event and then taken down at the end of the event. And that's where the opportunity comes from, because the construction and dismantling of the temporary stage costs Life Fest about $150,000 a year.
Okay.
So if they have an alternative with a permanent stage that saves them that cost, that's what would allow them to invest in a permanent stage and come out ahead. Now, this is all very complicated. There's much to be decided. It may turn out that Life Fest cannot find the sponsors to build the permanent stage, but will instead agree to contract with us, not for the current $35,000 that they pay, but some amount above $100,000 per year, which would leave them ahead of their cost of putting up and taking down a temporary stage, but would also allow us a significant stream of income that would compensate us for constructing the stage. Each method has different appeal. One requires an upfront investment by the county that we would recover over a 10-year contract. And it would give us complete ownership of the stage and complete discretion in how to use it. The other method would allow us to avoid that initial capital expense, but would make it more complicated, because the county has a lot of rules with regard to what we can do when we do a construction project that might be different than a private party. And that would require the transaction to be real and not be a sham transaction. So that Life Fest would in fact have to own it, and we would have to have contractual relationships that would sort out our use of it. It's all very, very complicated. I believe we could give Impact Motorsports one more season without blocking those opportunities.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Corporation Counsel, can I speak on CB?
You could speak when it's on the agenda. I mean, when it's taken up on the agenda.
Okay, so only when it's on a report.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak, but the general public cannot.
Oh, I can speak though. Okay, and I would just like to make one more comment. I think once again tonight, it shows why the change in the rule is so necessary. I continue to be bewildered by why we are so afraid of hearing from the public. People come down here, they don't know what the rule is, and then we tell them, well, thanks for coming, but we're not interested in hearing what you have to say because it's not on the agenda. If we had a 3-minute limitation, what's the worst case that could happen? And, we might end up spending 30 minutes. Our meetings typically get out of here at 8:30. I don't know if it'd be a great tragedy to get out at 15 or 20 minutes later, but that's just my opinion, and it didn't work last time, so I'll be quiet.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that in more detail, Mr. Harris. I have not been privy to anything going on with this stage other than hearsay. And I'd like to know if you can tell me straight out that once this contract with Life Fest is executed, that they will commit to be at that fairgrounds for 10 years, because I personally believe with the way they are growing that they're soon going to run out of space out there. So is there any sort of back talk about that in terms of what happens? Can they get out of the contract if they grow? I mean, what's going on with that?
They do a long-term contract, and that essentially obligates them to pay us. But if either they've gotten a donor to build a stage, that would lock them into that location. They're not likely to move away with a donated stage. Or if they contract with us for a much higher amount of money, and they're in a 10-year contract without an out clause, then they in fact would be locked in to at least pay us. That does not prohibit them from paying us.
So they could move, but they would still have to pay?
They would still have to pay.
Okay. All right.
Although what we genuinely want is for them to stay, because the amount of money that we receive is actually quite small compared to the tourism economic impact.
But I heard some of my colleagues last month, we were talking about, to say, well, they need the space, they're already outgrowing their space, which led me to believe that come 5-6 years from now, they're going to outgrow the whole space because they're growing dramatically. Thank you.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions. Number one, how close are we to going ahead and getting this stage? I mean, we hear about talk, but how close are we to that line?
We're in negotiations with Life Fest. They're exploring their opportunities with potential donors. We're not as close as we'd like to be, and that's why I think there is room for one additional season. And at the end of that season, we can see where we stand. But I would not want to commit the county to a long-term contract with the Impact Motorsports that would block that opportunity. This will give us the maximum flexibility. There is another issue as well, in that other track operators have now contacted us because of the publicity that this has gotten. If we were going to go with a long-term contract, we really should put that out to bid, and the Parks Committee should be able to sift through the various opportunities that we would have. But those parties would all be interested in multi-year contracts. If we're only going to go forward for 1 year to see where we are, then I think that should just be done as a renewal with Impact Motorsports.
And I have two more questions. You were saying like if you charge them $100,000, they'd go ahead and do that. Now that would have to come back to the board before we could build a stage, right? So even if you do sign something with them, it isn't a done deal until it'd come back here.
Well, that's right. It all would have to be conditional on the board approving the transaction. And actually, any long-term contract over a year has to come back to the board for a majority vote.
And last thing, I appreciate you thinking of the fair all the time, but the most we use the grandstand would be once and possibly twice during the whole fair. So, but I do appreciate you keeping us in mind. Thank you.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
And it's on Resolution 054, line 11, where it specifically says, re-offer the original. What was the original? How much time, how many dollars was the original?
Yeah, and I probably am going to defer to the Parks Department because they were the one that put together that contract. But I believe it was a multi-year contract, and I believe it was for $22,000 a year. Some of the earlier contracts had much smaller amounts of rent, but the utilities were carried by Impact Motorsports. This one is a more all-inclusive contract. However, there are limitations on how high the electric and water usage can go before additional charges are added. And Rob can tell us, I believe it was 3 years, but is that 5? Was that a 3-year or 5-year contract, that original one?
The original was 3 years. The one we just went through then had a year extension.
So if this resolution caused us to go back to that contract that was last offered when negotiations were broken off, that would be for a 3-year contract.
Well, 2 years. This is a 1-year extension, so they've totally been on the same contract for 3 years.
Thank you.
Supervisor Warnke.
Mark, the way I understand it, the Parks Committee has nothing to say or do about this deal with getting this stage built. So it's all under your direction. You will make all the decisions.
No, actually, all of these things originated with the Parks Committee, and
yeah, but when it comes down to the final decision, you're the one that's going to make it, right? As far as signing contracts to put up a stage.
No, if there's a 1-year contract for renewing Impact Motorsports, that's the length of my authority, is up to 1 year.
You set the policy.
Now, if there's going to be a longer term in contract involved, if there's going to be a capital expenditure, all those things require the support of this board.
The board sets the policy, you give the direction to the executive, and then he follows through with it.
That's true, but okay, I'll go along with that, but the way I understood it, the committee at this point has nothing to say about it. And that's what I was told. Now,
No, I don't think that's correct, and I'm sure you'll hear from them tonight.
What's not correct?
The Parks Board is very much involved in this whole process, and they've invested an enormous amount of time at looking at what their options are and working with Rob Way. They're not excluded from this process. They're very much central to the whole process.
Okay, but who makes the final decision?
Well, I would say the board, because If it requires a capital expenditure, that will be in the board's hand. If it requires a long-term contract, that will be in the board's hands.
I mean, are you taking into account not only the money part of it, but also what's happened out at that park? Now, we've put an awful lot of money into the swimming hole that we had out there, which went totally underwater, and they quit it, and that was a ton of money. And also, we spent $86,000 to put on a rubber floor on a tennis court, which every time I ride by there, there's nobody even there. And it just seems like you're looking at only the money. You have to start looking at the taxpayers and the citizens here. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that count. They're the ones who've been here.
Absolutely, we have to look at the impact on the taxpayers. But we have been operating the racetrack at a loss for 10 years under a promise that the business would be built up and that we would eventually be paid fairly. And that's what, and this board directed the...
Well, they have agreed to change their ways. They've agreed to take the original contract that you offered. Mm-hmm. Why not just let them have it? And if there's something that Life Fest wants, then acquire some more land. There's a whole bunch of fields out there that could probably be bought.
But you have, well, there's a couple reasons. And I think maybe discussion among the board that includes the Parks Committee would be very constructive. But you do have significant assets there. You have the grandstands, you have concession stands, you have permanent restrooms. Those all add value to having a stage in that area. Okay? The county's never recovered the investment for the racetrack. We haven't even recovered the cost of the sound barriers.
We haven't recovered a lot of money from a lot of projects that we've done.
That's correct. But at some point you cut your losses. And my position is that when I remember the first year when they bid on it, and I know people's memories will be different, but when I was first elected, even before I was sworn in, Country USA told me they were running out of space, and if we couldn't do something about it, they were going to have to move. I went to the Parks Board and talked to them, and they were very skeptical that Country USA would ever leave, but it became apparent that they were in fact going to leave, and then the effort was to keep them in the county so that the economic impact would stay here. Shortly after I was sworn into office, the operator of the track had thrown in the towel. And Impact Motorsports came in, actually people from the first organization that failed, then there was a second. Impact Motorsports was largely formed by people involved in the first, and they told us, you know, it'll be a shame to have racing leave the county, and that's where we looked like we were. And I agreed with them that we wanted to keep racing in the county, and we were willing to take a chance on them. And they told us we had to give them the track for almost nothing. Those are the words I remember. For them to get it started, and they would do their best to build the audience, and eventually they would pay the county fairly. I believe they did their darndest to try and do that. But when it came time to at least cover our costs, after 10 years of time to build up the audience, they broke off negotiations. That's the facts of the matters. And check with your parks director, check with your parks committee. They've been involved in all of this.
I mean, another thing you could bring up into this discussion is the soccer out there. Do they pay the bills? Do they make money for the park? I mean, they sure have an awful lot of people out there playing soccer, which I totally think is great. But, I mean, this is not a money-making organization. Give them a break. Let them have the contract. But I guess that's all I have
to say. All right. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harris, let me understand this now, just to make sure everybody else, when it comes time to vote. If we vote to defeat this resolution, that you will still extend the contract to the motorsports people.
Yeah, and that came about from discussions this week with Rob, that I wanted to know where we stood on the negotiations with Life Fest on the permanent stage. And Rob indicated that there was a lot of open items, that he didn't think that stage would be in by the next racetrack season. So it makes sense to me that we should give Impact Motorsports an additional year. That also would give them time if they hope to find another location. And I think in conversations with me, they had indicated that if they couldn't use our track, that they would in fact look for a new location. I think they'll be better off with one more year. But I don't think we want to enter into a multi-year contract, because then you're blocking the opportunity that would allow us to lock in the bigger, more profitable, more economic impacting events.
Well, this is one of those occasions where I agree with you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Finch. Go ahead.
Thank you. First off is, I'm the one that told Supervisor Warnke that we were taken out of the location of it. We were in it until Impact Motorsports said, no way, we will not do this, we'll go elsewhere, we're not going to pay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. Right, we were involved up until then. From that point on, it was between Mr. Way and Mr. Harris. That's what I was told from Mr. Way. So when you say one thing, and I'm told a different thing, that makes the park committee look bad, which I do not appreciate. So, now, bottom line is this, while you're still clapping back there, if Impact Motorsports would have taken care of business like they should, but they wanted to play games. The bad thing about it, the game bit them. So, who's the bad guy? Winnebago County supervisors or the leaders of Impact Motorsports? The bottom line is this. I don't mind going one more year, but I don't think we should go any more than that. But then again, I'm only one vote. And on what I've just heard from him and other people through here, the county board is being the bad guy, and it's not true. Impact Motorsports are the bad guys, as far as I am concerned. They're the ones that told us to take the hike. Nobody else, but they did. So we took the hike. And Mark did a superb job, I think, with Life Fest. You know, we've been told by this county board numerous of times, try to make money into the parks to pay for itself. We tried back 10, 12 years ago. Supervisor Warnke mentioned about the soccer fields. We tried to get a user's fee for it, and the county board shot us down. Why? Because of the fact it's something for our people, for the taxpayers. When we talk about taxpayers, you got to remember something. Taxpayers is from the north, the south, the east, and the west of Winnebago County, not just one little area. So we do what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Bodner will give us an explanation on quorums.
It's my understanding that a concern was raised at the last meeting, which I wasn't attending, about the boilerplate language that we had started putting on our notices, and also with regard to quorums inadvertently being formed at meetings of bodies that weren't noticed. And by that I mean, let's say you had the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting, and 3 people happened to show up there that would form a quorum for, let's say, the Parkview Health Committee, and that not being noticed and the problems that came with it. Back in April or May, I suggested to the county board and also to the county clerk that we add boilerplate language to our agenda notices for committees that said that if there happened to be a quorum of another committee there, that this notice, whatever the notice was, would serve as a notice for that committee also. We had an issue that back in in the summer that we asked, the county asked for an opinion from the Attorney General with regard to. And at the end of July, I received an opinion from one of the Deputy Attorney Generals that's in charge of public notices of meetings and providing opinions with regard to that. And he said in a letter that he sent to me at the end of July, as you both know, every public notice of a meeting must give the time, date, place, and subject matter of the meeting, including that intended for consideration at any contemplated closed session. The notice must be in such a form so as to reasonably apprise the public of this information. A boilerplate notice on a particular governmental body's agenda that states any county board subcommittee may have a quorum in attendance at that particular governmental body's meeting is not sufficient notice. Such a notice is not reasonably likely to apprise members of the public and the news media of the time, date, place, and subject matter of a meeting because it does not provide notice of an actual meeting of a governmental body. It merely communicates the time, date, place, and subject matter of a possible meeting of any number of governmental bodies. In some cases, the use of boilerplate notice is meant to balance the requirements of the law with the practical difficulties involved with governmental bodies that consist of a number of members in various subcommittees. However, as stated previously, the Open Meetings Law acknowledges that the public is entitled to the fullest and most complete information regarding governmental affairs and is compatible with conducting government business. The use of boilerplate notices is not in keeping with the Open Meetings Law declaration of policy. This type of notice of a possible meeting is not the fullest and most complete information regarding governmental affairs to which the public is entitled. How does that affect you? It means that if you decide to show up at another committee's meeting and by you showing up, it creates a quorum of a committee that's not meeting at that time, you need to post the fact that the second committee has a quorum in advance. It could be the same notice that the committee that's meeting has out, but you need to post on there, for example, it's a member of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee and a member meeting of the Parkview Health Center Committee, for example. Now, this is what the Attorney General is saying. This is their opinion. They're not a court. This isn't the same as a court issuing an opinion, but they're seen as persuasive authority in the state. They give their opinions to try to keep people like you out of trouble. And when they provide an opinion like this, I usually, I don't 100% always go along with what the Attorney General wants, and there have been times when they've been mistaken with regard to things. But I would suggest that you go along with that, and you do that. I see a lot of you continuing to attend meetings on an ad hoc basis. I shouldn't say a lot of you, but a handful of you continue to attend meetings on an ad hoc basis of other committees, and you do not post a notice in advance that you're forming the quorum of a third committee. You need to be cognizant of that, and you can't just show up and thumbtack a notice to the wall. You need to do that in advance, at least 24 hours in advance. Somebody asked, well, what happens if I show up, who needs to leave? And my answer is, if you're not a member of the committee and you are forming a quorum of a second committee which isn't noticed, then you should leave. Now, you certainly have a right to attend any meeting you want, just like any other member of the, citizen of Winnebago County. However, because you are a member of the county board and you may be forming the quorum of another committee when you do things like that, you need to post the notice in advance, at least 24 hours of notice in advance, or you need to leave. You can't just show up there and say, well, geez, I didn't know this was going to happen. So that's my advice to you. I know that's painful to some of you. You may not like it, but this is the advice we're getting from the Attorney General, and this is the advice that I'm passing on to you, that you need to do this. I received this letter in July. I went to a seminar which two of the members of the Open Meetings Law staff the Attorney General's office was at in August. I listened to them, I asked some questions, and this is the advice that I'm giving you. And I've advised the county clerk to take out the boilerplate language. If you're going to be at a meeting, you're not a member of that committee, and you're going to form a quorum for another committee, you need to give notice that's a meeting of that second committee, or third committee, whatever it might be. Does anybody have any questions?
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you. John, unless it went over my head. Now, like, I'm on 2 committees, all right, and I have 2 other of my supervisors on the same, both committees. So, are we legal because we're on this committee, but we're also on that committee?
Well,
or do we have to post it?
Well, if you're meeting, let's say you're on the Parks Committee, okay?
Yep.
And you have 2 people on the Parks Committee that are meeting, or 3 people, and they are forming a quorum for a second committee?
That we're on the committee. We're on both committees.
Yeah. You need to post that. It can be the same notice, but you need to post at the top, it's a member of the Parks Committee. It's a meeting of the Parks Committee, and it's a meeting of the second committee. Just trying to keep you folks out of trouble.
I appreciate that because I am on what you just said. I'm on 2 different committees with 2 other supervisors, on the same committees. So
I'd like to tell you otherwise.
I'd like to.
And I know a lot of city attorneys and corporation councils have have their county clerks post boilerplate language in the agendas, but the Attorney General is giving us the advice that that's not going to work. That's not in compliance with a decision in a case from 20 years ago called Badke.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Supervisor Keller.
I understand that if a member, creates a quorum of another committee, that should be posted. But if you post it as there's a meeting of both committees, because, you're creating another committee with the third...
You're creating a quorum, not another.
Quorum. You're creating a quorum, and that's my point. I don't think it needs to be posted as 2 meetings, facilities and parks. I think it should be a facilities meeting, and there will be a quorum from the Parks Department there. That way the other people on the Parks Department know it's not a meeting. There's just going to be a quorum. They don't have to show up. Otherwise, they may look on the county agenda and see, well, it's a Parks Committee meeting. I have to go to that.
What you're saying makes total logic. I don't think the Attorney General sees it that way.
It's not a meeting. It's a quorum.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just telling you what the advice I received from the Attorney General was.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I'm just passing on the news to you.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, a couple of specific questions, and I'm not arguing. I just want to make sure that I'm going to do it right. If I want to go to a Parkview committee meeting, Tom Ellis is the chairman, and Supervisor Wingren is also on that committee. Along with me, the 3 of us form a quorum from Judiciary and Public Safety. So do I, if I'm going to attend that meeting of Parkview, notify the chairman of Judiciary to post that there will be a quorum of Judiciary and Public Safety at Parkview?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you need to notify the clerk of that, too, so she can make sure that the notice says that.
By the same token, I often attend aviation committee meetings, and so does Supervisor Singstock. We don't form a quorum, but we never know if somebody else is going to show up that we are on P&F together with, because we're both on P&F. Should we have the chairman of P&F post a notice that there may be a quorum of P&F at the aviation committee? I don't know if there's going to be, but...
If you want to be safe, yes. If there isn't a quorum, you don't have any problems there. And this is one of the things that I have an issue with, because I think there's a difference between, this is just my personal opinion as an attorney, I think there's a difference between attending the meeting and participating in the meeting. So, for example, if we didn't have a quorum, let's say you have this televised tonight. somebody's watching at home that forms a quorum of another committee, does it actually form a quorum? And probably the answer is no. But the Attorney General doesn't see it that way, and the courts have not seen it that way. And it may be an item that you may want to speak to the Wisconsin Counties Association with regard to, and possibly look into changing the legislation with regard to this, because I do think it's a problem. I think it's a real problem in smaller counties.
Thank you.
Supervisor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bogner, there are 5 of us on the same committee, Judiciary and Emergency Management. So we would have to post for both committees?
That's correct. That's what the Attorney General is saying. Which isn't hard to do. All you need to do is it's a meeting of the, what were your 2 committees?
The 2 committees would be the Judiciary, Public Safety, and the Emergency Management Committee.
You just need to post that at the top of the notice. At least that's my understanding.
Okay.
Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get to the question I had, just on what you just said, John, if there's no agenda posted, there's no agenda items listed.
That's one of the things I argued to the Attorney General.
How
are you supposed to post an agenda?
And what you're saying is that you would post a meeting.
And what he responded was, I said in the letter, it says here, Mr. Bodner raises a question of how the subcommittees can provide proper notice for a meeting for which neither subcommittee has control over the agenda. However, the answer may be found in those committees share concern with ensuring compliance with the open meetings law. For example, he goes on, and I think he dodged the question, but I think, he says you can, in a case, he said separate notices for both committees are not required. A single notice may be used. So, I think the laws, I think you have a law, which is a good law, but people write laws, the legislature, they don't contemplate a lot of things. And this is an issue that has come up, and it's an issue that you folks probably should take to the Wisconsin Counties Association and address with your legislators, because with things like I said, televised meetings, taping meetings, and things like that, certainly people can watch the meetings, they can see what happens at the meetings without attending, and I don't necessarily see how that's different than somebody sitting in the back of the room and not saying anything, and I think it creates a lot of problems. But this is what the law is. Unless you challenge this in court, which I don't think you want to do, the Badke decision from 20 years ago still stands, and you need to follow that.
The question I had then was, I was at a seminar for town officials a couple of years ago, and there's other town board members that are on this board, and this question was raised by some of the clerks that were there, and the question was because there are 3-person town boards out there that have sometimes relatives that are on the same board. So if they get together for Christmas, that's a quorum.
Well,
and the advice, just let me finish, please. The advice that we were given at that time by the attorney that was given that seminar was, you on your own have to police yourself and not conduct the business of that board. And assuming that was a true statement, I think the same thing here. If I'm at a committee meeting and 2 others are there, we don't talk about business for our committee. We self-police ourselves. Then it's not an issue.
Well,
you run into somebody on the street, you're not supposed to say, hey, how's the weather? It just doesn't make much sense.
The presumption is the presumption under the law is when there's enough people that gets together to form a quorum, the presumption is that there's a quorum of that committee. That's a rebuttable presumption. So, for example, if you got 36 people on the board, if 19 of you show up because your daughter's getting married or your son's getting married, and they were all invited as guests, and they show up there, the presumption is that's a quorum, but it's a rebuttable presumption because the law talks about chance social gatherings, and that probably is a chance social gathering. But if you do show up by, happen to be in the coffee shop at the same time as two other people, you do need to police yourself. You do need to do that, and you need to be able to overcome that presumption and say it was just a chance gathering that we all bumped in together down at the donut shop or the bagel shop that day.
That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bodner, are there actual penalties or repercussions?
Sure.
Or fines or so? What?
Sure, you can, I think the fine is between $25 and $300, and that has to be paid by the offending official. It can't be paid by the county. And the insurance company won't pay that fine either. The insurance company may represent you, but they won't pay the fine. So I think it's 25 to 300, if I'm correct. Might be 500, but I think it's 300.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Singstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, it's my understanding, again, I repeat myself, it's my understanding that if 3 board members show up in violation of the law, that the chairman of that committee is the one that's going to have the problem?
The chairman of the committee that is unnoticed is the one that's supposed to post the notice of that committee meeting.
Right, so I want to make sure I
So
understand.
you're creating a problem for him, but you also create a problem for yourselves.
Right. But,
you could all be fine.
But I'm just saying, but how it's unfair to the chairman of that committee, he may not know that the 3 members showed up.
Yeah.
But he's still responsible, am I correct? Yes or no, please?
He's responsible for posting the notice.
Okay, good. So he is responsible. So then the next question is, probably the 3 members of that committee should contact the chairman and say, we intend on showing up, and say that's his responsibility to contact the clerk.
It is, but if he doesn't contact the clerk and you don't have a notice posted, you're all in trouble.
And he is still, okay, but he'd still be responsible.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're out of trouble.
No, I know that. Thank you.
Supervisor Roll.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, that brings up another question. If I, as chairman of Facilities and Property Management, am not aware that any other supervisors are coming, and 2 or 3 come that form a quorum, whose responsibility is to dilute that quorum? Is that one of them has to leave?
Well, you would hope that they would leave. I mean, it's kind of like you're having a party and you have 3 people that crash it. So, you're having a meeting of the Facilities and Property Management Committee, and you have all the people there, and 3 people who aren't a member of the committee come in and attend the meeting, and they're forming a quorum of another committee. It's their responsibility to make sure that's noticed, not you.
So then what happens? Does the chairman of the committee say, hey, one of you guys got to leave?
I think you can point out to them that there's a potential problem there, and that you're not going to continue to have the meeting there. You're not going to continue to allow the meeting to go on with them there. I think that would be the best answer. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but I think it might be the best thing to do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask Ernie Winters, the Highway Commissioner, to come up. He's going to give us a presentation on CB and Oak Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your desks this evening, there's a handout about, I believe it's about 8 or 9 pages long. We're going to talk through this. I'd also ask permission for Mike Scarman. He's with KL Engineering. He's the engineer who did the study, to also speak as a part of this presentation as well. I know most of what's in here, but Mike did the work, and knows it at a much deeper level than I do, quite honestly. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this again. I know we've talked about it several times. This is a discussion of the CB and Oak Ridge intersection. We did an ICE analysis this time around. It's an intersection control evaluation. This project is, as we all know, been on our radar screen for a number of years. A few years ago, we did a traffic warrant analysis, which is different than the ICE analysis, to see if traffic signals were warranted. Back then, the county knew there were some issues with accidents, and I think there had been a fatality at that point, maybe two. At that point, the pure traffic control warrant analysis, the warrants were not met for signals, so signals and additional stops were not installed. Several years later, I believe it was in 2012, we continued to see more and more traffic and issues with the intersection. More accidents, more near misses. We hired the same firm to kind of dust off what they'd done before and update everything. The results leaned more towards taking some action, but still the warrants were not met. Those are, and I need to mention, and I've said this before up here, they're not hard warrants. There's no rule, there's no law that you have to meet them before you put in traffic signals. But it's to keep cities and counties from being arbitrary about these types of things. It provides guidance, so we know what it is we should be doing in these cases. So obviously, since then, we've seen crashes continue to occur. We all know there are issues at that intersection. There are geometric issues. There are a lot of lanes. There's a little rise to the south. There's a lot going on there. And when you combine that with a lot of traffic and a lot of activity, especially commute times, we wind up with lots of incidents, and we've had plenty. So we decided that a study was needed at this intersection, a deeper dive, if you will, that would give us the data that we need to do a couple of things. One is make a really smart decision on what improvement needs to be done, what improvements maybe need to be looked at short-term, and what long-term improvements need to be done. And secondly, the timing of it was good because there's a grant program available through the DOT called the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And typically, when you're going to qualify for funding in this program, you need to develop the sort of data that we did in this ICE evaluation. The timing really worked out well. So we moved forward on that. The study's completed. We did apply for the grant. We applied for a roundabout. That was determined by the consultant, and I agreed to be the best option at that location. It's the safest option. Doesn't mean we can't build signals. Not at all. It means that's the safest option to take. The second option would, in all likelihood, be a signalized intersection with geometric improvements, where we're fixing the laning. We're channelizing some of the laning. We're making some changes to the intersection so it works better, along with installing signals. The roundabout's going to be about 1.7 or 1.8 million. A signalized intersection with intersection improvements would be about 1.2. Neither one of those would touch the hill to the south. And Mike's going to talk more about this in his section, but my understanding is if we put a roundabout in, we don't need to touch the hill because of the way the characteristics are of roundabouts. And if we do a signalized intersection, I believe KL is recommending we would in all likelihood, could leave the hill as well, because we'd be stopping all four ways at the signals. If we're successful on this grant application, we'll receive a project agreement from DOT to construct the roundabout at CB and Oak Ridge. This would be a 90-10 cost share, and KL has a very good track record. One of the reasons why we looked to hire them was because of that track record. They're very good at this sort of thing. And again, I think I mentioned this before as well, if for some reason, if this comes as a resolution next month and the county board decides that for whatever reason, a roundabout's not appropriate, we can still do a signalized intersection. We would have to reapply for funding through the DOT if we would hope to build a signalized intersection with DOT funding. It's my understanding that would also compete well with the state, but it would be a new process. I would like to mention too, right at the end of the day, I've told Mike, I haven't told anybody else, I did hear from DOT that we got the grant. It's for about $1.6 million, $200,000 for design and the rest for construction. I don't have the paper in hand, I don't have exact numbers, I just heard today. So I think that's good news if we do want to push this forward and build this roundabout. So I'd like to ask Mike if the board is willing to entertain his comments for a few minutes and have him work through some of the study stuff.
Thank you for the opportunity to elaborate a little bit on this. Ernie kind of introduced me, but I'm Mike Scarman. I'm with KL Engineering. We're in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. We've done these type of studies for dozens of intersections all across the state of Wisconsin, and have in this case I wanted to mention too, we partnered with Bremer Associates out of Fond du Lac. They participated in some of the civil design cost estimates and other tasks. I don't know if that better. There we go. The packet in front of you does a nice job of laying out a lot of specific statistics, so I'm going to be kind of general, but I wanted to give a little background in how the ICE, we abbreviate the intersection control evaluation to, we call it the ICE process, to people that are involved with these. So if I go out with that, that's what I'm talking about. But a little bit of elaboration on the ICE evaluation that did go into the CB and Oak Ridge intersection, highlight some of the most notable characteristics that came out of the process. We did start working in May, and as already mentioned, we wrapped up in late August with the final report in the HISIP grant application materials for Winnebago County. The ICE evaluation kind of works in a two-phase manner. The first, we investigate the existing intersection characteristics from things like traffic flow, the crash history review. We'll look at topography and geometrics, look at site distance, things like that. The second phase is looking at the alternative for improvement and how concepts stack up in terms of meeting the needs of the intersection from a safety or traffic operations perspective, as well as cost and impacts to properties and things like that. Kind of dialing in most specifically with the crash history, given the background at this intersection, we were able, from the review of crash reports, we did some video footage of the intersection, both for data collection, but from an observational standpoint. And using those, we were able to really pinpoint some pretty clear indications of substandard features of the intersection that very clearly correlated to the crash patterns that we saw occurring. And I will say that it's relatively uncommon that going through this type of review process that we see as clear of a connection as we did in this case. And Ernie mentioned that, you know, the hill to the south of the intersection, I think most people that drive through there are familiar with that experience, is definitely the one we link probably most significantly to the crashes, especially the ones that occur to the vehicles that fail to yield. But that several other factors are involved, and I think the combination of these factors really do create a dynamic that it's very unsafe specific times of day, encourages unsafe behavior. A couple of these key points, in addition to the sight distance to the south, Ernie mentioned there's a lot of lanes. There's basically 12 lanes of different movements to keep track of. There's already a lot of traffic and a limited sight distance, so it adds to the complexity of the driver's experience at this intersection. That's definitely something we observed. Multiple vehicles kind of lane by lane blocking each other's view is a common problem we were able to observe, and we're supported by some of the crash data. And one thing kind of specifically relating to the time of day when that traffic flow is the heaviest, especially afternoon, pardon me, we were able to see a lot of clear indications of as delay, cars stacked up, might wait 1, 2, 3 minutes for gaps. People's decision making would turn a little hastier, and we saw a lot of evidence of unsafe maneuvers during those times, just out of, I think, frustration and the length of delay that is occurring in the peak hours there. So not from a safety perspective, there's a lot of evidence, and from a traffic operational perspective, there's a lot of delays. So the features we were able to correlate as substandard, we were able to draw a lot of conclusions to contributing to the crash problem. And going through this process from the standpoint of somewhat forensically looking at what's going on out there really helps us identify the most applicable and effective improvement scenarios, and that kind of leads us into the second phase, which was to identify what types of improvement measures could be considered, both from a long-term perspective, and these would be ones that you would measure against 20 years of traffic growth and a full life cycle of the pavement and everything like that, versus shorter term ones that would be lower cost, you could implement in a quicker time frame. Looking at both of those, concentrating in the most detail with the long term, we were able to identify several short-term alternatives, and I'll be brief in the description that basically we identified the fact that anything that maintains stop control would either exacerbate the delay at the intersection and potentially would not really give a whole lot of confidence, would mitigate the crash patterns, because it's stop control now and there's some evidence that people are disregarding stop signs regardless of a lot of mitigating attempts, 2 or 3 rumble strips, things like that. It seems like it hadn't shown an evidence that those would be effective. One of additional items that we looked at from a short-term perspective was a temporary traffic signal, kind of a 2 to 3 year lifespan type of installation that you will see usually around construction projects. And I'll touch on that a little bit here after I go into the description of the long-term, which was the primary focus of the study. The long-term improvement alternatives, already mentioned those. We identified basically the option of signalizing the intersection. We did suggest making some geometric improvements, most notably increasing lane storage for turning vehicles. Once you stop vehicles on CB, they need more storage. So there were some extensions of turn lanes, and we did suggest putting channelized right turns, both from the perspective of making safer pedestrian and bicycle movements, but also just from efficiency of traffic flow, simplifying the intersection. Ernie mentioned that had a $1.2 million price tag. It affects some properties. Some statistic on the crash reduction potential. Signals in the case of two-way stop control intersection are shown to have a roughly 44% reduction in overall crashes, but would increase rear-end crash type by 58%. It doesn't necessarily, in this case, without the lowering the hill, take away the potential of a person disregarding a stoplight, just like you might see some of the evidence of disregarding the stop sign. So these crash patterns aren't necessarily reduced from their potential, but the likelihood is they would go down. Signals are very much more conspicuous than stop signs, and definitely the statistics show that they would be effective in reducing the crashes. The alternative that we did end up recommending, the roundabout, had the greater potential for the reduction in injury and severe type crashes, and that's largely just based on the geometric nature of a roundabout. It's very difficult to enter and exit through a roundabout. Somewhere between 15 and 25 miles per hour is generally what a vehicle can safely navigate just to maintain control of a vehicle. So it's very unlikely that you're going to see the high-speed crashes occur at all, which was a large part in having a comfort level of not changing the topography of the hill, which had a lot of extenuating circumstances that made that more difficult than just reconstructing a section of road. The crash reduction potential of the roundabout, combined with the fact that it does have the ability to accommodate traffic as growth occurs in the future. There is an expandable component that opening it to a single lane, you could still expand it to a multi-lane. You could conceivably start it as a multi-lane. There's a lot of options as far as what might make the most sense from a traffic compatibility. Either way, the safety potential would be realized, and our report and our conclusions of our study did suggest that the roundabout would be the best long-term approach for the county to implement at this intersection. And I guess I wanted to touch real quickly, we did essentially at this point in the discussion, we brought that information to the public at a public involvement meeting in late July. We did get a lot of good input, really did validate a lot of our observations of what the crash patterns we observed, and we got a lot of information from people with a pretty high degree of familiarity with the intersection. And also note that there was virtually unanimous support of the roundabout concept when we provided information on both alternatives. So I guess in conclusion with the study, we recommended the roundabout. We provided some documentation to the county, and in terms of the grant application, we're able to provide supporting documentation of the process that they needed. I would like to kind of conclude with the fact that we did suggest that the time frame of a long-term alternative could be 2 to 3 years. Given the reoccurring crash pattern, we did suggest a short-term alternative would be warranted at this location. I mentioned a little bit there were several considered. The one that we felt had the most merit would be a temporary traffic signal for a short-term installation if the county were to feel that was required. That was a recommendation that we felt it's warranted. The cost would be a component of additional on top of the overall long-term cost, but that was one other element of the study. That's what I have.
Okay, are there any questions that Supervisor Gabbard?
I guess my question is for Ernie. Thank you very much for hiring KL. All my questions have really been answered about this, so I have no qualms about the roundabout. But Mike just said it would be 2 to 3 years for that roundabout time frame. So you said we got the grant. So to me, being a numbers person, this is a no-brainer right now, because if we only have to pay 10% of the total, there should be no other decision other than a roundabout. But the time frame worries me of 2 to 3 years. But I understand everything in the county and in government takes forever. So my question to you is, if we do a temporary stop and go light, at one point in time you were throwing out a number, I thought it was like $100,000. Is that the same number?
It would be less.
Yeah.
It would probably be 30 to 50,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ernie, to piggyback onto what Supervisor Gabbard had just said, and if I understood you correctly, the total cost appears to be about 1.8, and the state, I'm not going to hold you to a few bucks here and there, but 1.8, and of that, the state's going to pick up 1.6?
I don't have it in hand. My understanding is they're going to pick up 1.6.
Okay.
Yes.
So it costs the counties a couple $100,000.
Correct.
If you were to do a controlled intersection, and if they gave us 10% of the 1.2, it's 120,000.
Correct.
Versus the 200,000, to use your words, it's a no-brainer. 2.5 to 3 years for to get the design and the construction and so forth. How long would you anticipate before? No, I'm sorry. How long do you anticipate once you start construction it's going to take to complete it? I mean, are we talking 2 months, 6 months?
More than that, probably 4 to 6 months. One construction season if we got it going in spring.
Okay. And did I understand Mike correctly that on the short term, you can stay there, Ernie, that's the easy question. Did I understand Mike correctly that he said that they are suggesting a short-term traffic signal while the construction's going on, or prior to the construction?
Our recommendation, or our study concluded that, given the long time frame, coupled with the recurring crash pattern, despite mitigating attempts to fix it, that a short-term implementation would be warranted. We sifted through several of those short-term options that really kind of boil down to only the temporary traffic signal seem to be worth the short-term investment.
My question is, when would that happen?
That would be something that could be implemented sooner, and we did point out one relatively positive aspect of it. You could transition that into the construction project and use it as a traffic management device during the project itself.
So will you build that into the resolution that you bring forth?
I can do that.
Next question, the hill, the rise, the knoll. Now you're saying unequivocally, we don't have to spend $400,000 to shave that.
You have to talk into the mic here.
Talking to the mic.
With a roundabout, very confidently can say that hill, the need to have that distance to see in advance of your oncoming traffic movement really is a different equation. The vehicle speeds are that much lower. The dynamics of using a roundabout is so much different that it's really not that significant of a factor. With the traffic signal, let's say it's a little different dynamic that standards would suggest you don't have to do that. Out of practicality, that, like I mentioned before, there's nothing that prohibits somebody who's on their cell phone from blowing through the stop sign, and still that hill can be a contributing factor to people that disregard traffic control. It happens on occasion. We have crash history of that with the stop signs. So let's say from a standards perspective, you would not have to stay kosher with all the rules and regulations we follow from an engineer's perspective, but we didn't recommend the long term in part because that didn't offer really that ironclad kind of feeling of confidence that it would take away that type of crash from occurring at all.
Thank you.
Supervisor Robel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Highway Committee, when we met the last couple of times, we discussed quite a bit about the people that we had hired for us. We feel they did a very, very good job for the county, and their recommendations, our committee believes is the best one we can put on that intersection. Thank you.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Winters, you mentioned a time frame of 2 to 3 years, and I'm sure everybody else wants their project done ASP as possible. What are our chances on the 2 or less?
Not terribly good, I'm afraid. When you take their money, you follow their rules, and it's just that simple. And the DOT has built a lot of rules into using these types of funds. We would do it as quickly as we can, but I'm just telling everybody it could be 2 to 3 years.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the presentation. It looks a little bit different than the presentation at the committee meeting a month or so ago. But a couple specific questions and observations maybe first. There was a member of the town of Neenah, I don't know if it's a volunteer fire department there, and one of the comments that he made during the presentation was about the intersection just to the north of Oak Ridge. And forgive me, I don't know the name of that specific road. I had looked it up, but I forget now.
County O.
That's the one that kind of juts at an angle.
Correct.
And ends up at the Citgo station, up a little further on II. And the comment was that intersection is going to be the next one. And it might be the next one, but JJ might be the next one. So I think that maybe the warning here is, if we end up putting a roundabout on Oak Ridge, we may very well end up putting a roundabout on OO, or maybe JJ. And then the question leads to, what about II? Are there any accidents on II? Are there any accidents at any of the controlled intersections to the north of CB? If there are accidents there, since a roundabout is safer, should we not replace those controlled intersections with roundabouts? I mean, where do we start and where do we stop with roundabouts and trying to eliminate traffic accidents altogether, or the severity of traffic accidents altogether. Part of the presentation was about the stacking on Oak Ridge. Currently, there was a number of seconds or minutes where traffic that stops on Oak Ridge heading west actually stops, and there's a potential of stacking there. My question during the presentation, during the Highway Committee meeting was, if we build just a single lane roundabout, will there not continue to be stacking in that specific portion of a roundabout there? And there wasn't really a good answer. Why would we not, if we're going to build a roundabout there, which it seems like we're going to go ahead and do, we've already got the grant money, et cetera, why do we not build a dual lane roundabout right from the get-go instead of kind of plan for it and kind of build a single lane, which is kind of a double lane, instead of just flat out building a double lane roundabout right from the get-go?
I mean, Mike, you can comment on this too. I think it's probably partially a cost issue. I think a single lane probably meets at least the minimum criteria in terms of traffic flow. I mean, that was a good question about backups on Oak Ridge. We wouldn't anticipate those with a single lane, but the idea would be to build it, to acquire the right-of-way, build the footprint big enough to accommodate two, but not build two right away. So did you want to say something, Mike?
Sure, right. I guess to touch on the differential in terms of, we could show that a single lane roundabout meets standards, hits all the criteria, would effectively manage traffic. I would say a single lane roundabout would likely have, let's say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 30% more stacking during the heaviest peak hours of travel than it would if you had a dual lane. That doesn't mean it's to a degree anywhere near what the intersection has now, which would be considered on our scale of interpretation as failing. It would be considered acceptable. The multi-lane does handle what we projected for future traffic demand based on a moderate amount of growth. There's a lot of potential in the area for traffic to increase and development to occur. So it's kind of, you do have to plan for the future a little bit. If you open it today and look at just what volumes are out there today, a single lane would probably operate very much appropriate. Once you put that long-term investment, we also forecast out 20 more years of traffic growth. That's the point at which you might want to say maybe it would operate more effectively as the dual lane. You do have somewhat of a growing period in between that you either choose that full build or an incremental approach, and it's about somewhat of the degree of confidence in the development potential and the speed of that traffic growth of happening.
It just seemed like during the meeting there wasn't much of a cost difference between the single lane and the dual lane, simply because you're already acquiring the right-of-way, you're already laying the amount of cement and concrete necessary to facilitate a dual lane roundabout. So why would we not just propose and spend, the cost difference didn't seem that substantial. Why not just go ahead and build the dual lane roundabout right away if you're going to acquire the right-of-way and pretty much build it for a dual lane right away anyway? That's maybe the part of the presentation that I understood the least, so forgive me.
Let's say there's, I think, a perspective that we felt confident that a multi-lane roundabout, opening it that way, was appropriate. There is a recognition, however, that the state of Wisconsin looks at roundabouts and safety improvements very statistically, and the truth is a single lane roundabout has a slightly better crash reduction profile than does a multi-lane roundabout. So when we put this thing together and say, well, you truly have the option to go one or the other ways with this, we elected to kind of show it as a single lane roundabout because it had what statistically would be viewed by DOT as the highest potential for crash reduction. We felt good that it would be an adequate intersection to manage traffic. We did acknowledge the fact that as traffic grows, that multi-lane component might be more necessary, so the incremental approach was built into the recommendation because of that.
Sure, and I appreciate the answer that you've provided tonight, and I think that that's true if you consider the signage that they've actually had to add recently in Neenah on Winneconne and Green Bay Road. Obviously, there's still a lot of difficulty with people navigating the roundabout there. They've had to put in signs that say, I think the first one says, fly like an eagle, just not through a roundabout, something like that. And the second one says, turning left, question mark, use the left lane. So I certainly understand what you're saying, and because of that, I'm still not convinced that a roundabout is a safer alternative. It may be safer just based on the crash angles and things like that, but nothing is going to be safer when we have situations where people are just, driving inappropriately, which happens periodically. The last question I had was in regards to the bike car crashes. I think I had asked for some information about how many of these accidents that we have, and I never received anything. So do you have any further information about bike car accidents on CB and Oak Ridge?
We've had three. Since KL went back and looked. There may be some unreported, but we know of three.
And I think I had asked at the same meeting about any accidents that were reported on the intersections that are light-controlled intersections to the north, whether it be II or any of those others.
For bikes you're talking about?
Correct.
I could probably find that. I don't recall you asking it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have there been any discussions of changing speed limits?
No. It's trying to find a better answer, but it's really no. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it. It really, KL did include that as part of the study. And the speeds, yes, people do speed out there. But it's not exceptional to the way everyone drives everywhere else. That doesn't mean we shouldn't lower it. And if we build a roundabout, it will be lowered because they can't enter it that fast.
Supervisor Warnke.
It's been said here tonight that there's an accident every 71 days out there, which is about between 5 and 7 accidents a year. And this is going to take 2 to 3 years to build. Shouldn't there be an option of maybe closing the access to CB from Oak Ridge and until this thing is built? We could save between 15 and 20 accidents.
Want to talk about that?
That is definitely a topic that came up multiple times through the study process as I guess we would categorize that as one of the short-term implementation concepts. We did look at that as a test from a viability standpoint. We struggled on a number of accounts with that. There are factors involved. There's a signed exit off of the interstate saying Oak Ridge, that there's a little more relevance to that route from a connectivity standpoint than others that wouldn't necessarily intersect with the interstate. There's a lot of, I guess there's a lack of parallel routes. There would be a lot of misdirection with kind of the neighborhood users would have a lot of kind of detour to make up for the lack of that connection. So we really did struggle saying, it's not that simple in this case to just shut it off. There would have to be emergency services coordination and potentially with the state and federal government with modifying the road that the interstate exits at and other factors. So we looked at that. We looked at other short-term implementation features as well, and I guess our thought was that one had a lot of complexity embedded into it, so we did not necessarily suggest it as a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. It was very informative.
Can I ask permission to ask a question
No.
of Attorney Bodnar that's unrelated to my presentation? And it has to do with the county board.
Well, we got enough
Very
problems.
quickly.
We have enough problems. Go ahead.
We're going to do a turnout for transportation next week, Thursday night. Probably about 15, maybe 17 people in this room might be there. I have no idea how to post that meeting. And I'm just Should I just post it as a county board meeting, John?
If you think there's going to be a quorum of the county board, then you should contact the chairman and have him post it.
There's a lot of town folks who serve on the county board, and I hope we get a lot of people at the meeting, so maybe I better post it that way.
You post it however you want, post it however you want, as long as you pay all the per diems.
Yeah, it's up to the county board chair to post it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can post it.
Okay, thank you.
Zoning reports and ordinances. Report number 1, Peter G. and Cindy Wyenberg, Town of Neenah. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of zoning report number 1.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 090116, rezoning from A2 to R1 for tax parcel number 010-0088-04, parent P. Supervisor Fari.
I believe it should be Mr. Kreisner. Oh, it's the same one, I'm sorry. I move for approval. Thank you.
Well, we knew that was going to come up, so we made sure
Yeah.
that we had your name on it. You know.
I'm sorry, my mistake. I was thinking of something else. I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Report number 2, Craig L. and Pamela J. Cupiter, Town of Wolf River. Supervisor Kreischer. Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. A mandatory ordinance number 09-0216, rezoning from R1 rural residential to R1 rural residential without wetlands for tax parcel number 032-0730-16. Supervisor Kreischer. Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Report number 3, William H. Heber, Town of Wolf River. Supervisor Kreischer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of report number 3. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. A mandatory ordinance 09-03-16, rezoning from B2 to I1 for tax parcel number 032-0100-05. Supervisor Kreischer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of mandatory ordinance number 090316.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution and ordinances. On resolution and ordinances, ordinance number 055-9/2016 had been pulled. That's way down, so we can mark that when we get to it, that's been pulled. Resolution number 049-9/2016, authorize a 2-year contract with the U.S. Cellular Wireless Service. Supervisor Smith.
Move for approval of resolution number 049-92016.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Was worth the wait. Resolution number 050-9/2016, appropriate $4,200,000 to a capital project to reconstruct County A from Indian Point Road north to County Highway GG in the town of Vinland. Supervisor Robel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of resolution number 050-92016.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's a rating system, and I don't remember what it's called, but can somebody tell me what the current rating, no, I didn't see you back there, Ernie, the current rating is on that section of A?
I believe it's about a 5. It's on the PACER system, it's called.
Thank you. Thank you. But, okay, it's a 5 based on a scale of what's bad, what's good.
10 is wonderful, brand new. 0, you can't drive on it.
So we're somewhere in between.
Yes,
Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ernie, is that little mile stretch of road going to include a bike path?
That's one of the issues we're going to have to decide. There's a separate bike path up to Indian Point, and the budget that I put together includes the continuation of a separate path. However, I think we really ought to have the consultant look at different options, because building a separate path all the way to Neenah is going to be very, very expensive. And I don't know that it'll see the bike traffic that maybe it should in order to spend that kind of money. That's my opinion. Really, this ought to be decided by the county board and the highway committee.
That's
what we do with that.
Yeah, that's like putting the cart before the horse. Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to these matching funds and things from the state that we're seeing now, or you said earlier about a grant for this roundabout potentially that was approved, we know that there is difficulty with the state transportation funding right now. What is the potential that there might not be this funding going forward in the next state biennial budget?
I believe there's probably potential for that to happen. This 2-year budget submittal by DOT treats counties very well and treats these programs very well. However, it does impact some other parts of the DOT budget. So really no way to tell that, but it could happen that we see decreases in these funds.
Yeah, it sounded like most recently that the governor was talking about prioritizing maintenance projects over new projects. I think the new projects more or less were some of the maybe major projects, but regardless. And just to piggyback on Supervisor Olson's question, if there is a bike path that is a separate standalone lane from the highway, because there's state money involved, will that path need to be cleared 24/7, 365?
We would have to investigate that, quite honestly. I don't believe that path that exists now is cleared in that fashion, but it's possible if we built it with state money, they would require some sort of maintenance.
That's it. Supervisor Roble.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the board's information, that section of County A is a very, very old road. It's a concrete underneath there, and there's probably never been a decent base under there. And I know my uncles told me that years ago that was Highway 41 when it first went from Oshkosh to Neenah.
Okay, was there a second on it? No? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 051-9/2016, authorize the Office of Corporation Counsel for Winnebago County to represent the City of Neenah Police Commission and reciprocity for the City Attorney for the City of Neenah, representing Winnebago County Grievance Review Board. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for consideration of Resolution 51-9/2016,
Been moved and seconded.
I'd like to also mention, I personally do not support this. I think we're getting into a lot of trouble by entering into this agreement with the city of Neenah during a time when they could be costing us a lot of money.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll also voice the same concerns. Obviously, none of us were aware that this was even a practice or a current practice, but I don't think it's a good idea to continue it. Certainly, it does set priority issues, especially with the other municipalities in this county, and I think it would be an opportunity for this board to discontinue it, and I believe that's what we should do.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all see, the vote was 3-2. I was one of the 3, but it's a case where I voted for it before I'm going to vote against it. I will be voting no. There's just too many questions.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have opposed this resolution in committee, and I oppose it on the county board floor. This resolution asks the county board, upon the request from our insurance carrier, to formally authorize the Corporation Council to participate in a reciprocal agreement to provide services to the Neenah Police Commission. In my judgment, on behalf of my constituents and those of Winnebago County, the Neenah Police Commission is demonstrated to be a high-risk partner at this time. It is a party to an unsettled and uncertain legal entanglement stemming from the death of a motorcycle shop hostage. This is not the circumstances to reaffirm a reciprocity agreement for minor league legal work.
Supervisor Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many years ago, there were a couple of situations out at the sheriff's office that required a little extra advice to the grievance review board to keep them from getting in trouble over grievance procedures and disciplinary situations. The things that I just heard Mr. Eisen voice, Neenah Police Commission is well beyond that at this point. Our council would not be getting involved in the current situation because it has passed the Neenah Police Commission. But it's important for the Grievance Review Board, and in this case the Neenah Police Commission, to have legal advice and have legal advice from an outside party rather than from their own city attorney. It is a transparency issue. It's important that those members are given good legal advice and without any claims that they're being steered by the city's representative. This is a situation that in my 38 years happened twice. It just is working with Neenah, which is another a part of Winnebago County. I think this is a case where we're not doing justice to constituents in the Neenah area or Menasha area. I just don't think that worrying about what happened up there is a concern at this point for the Neenah Police Commission, and I don't believe that we're going to be getting involved or that John would be getting involved in the situation at the stage it's at.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We'll vote by our little iPad. I voted wrong. Hard to believe, but I did. I wanted to vote no. That has failed. Resolution number 052-9/2016, support increase. It loses. Resolution number 052-9/2016, support increased funding in the Children and Family AIDS allocation. Supervisor Ramos.
I believe it's the chairman of the Human Services Board, actually.
Who? Larry?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the adoption of Resolution 052-92016. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, Supervisor Eisen. Go ahead.
I would like to speak to this issue kindly, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a resolution that asks the state of Wisconsin, making a budget, which is a legislative act, to perform. Our rule, County Board Rule 7.7, requires a 3/4 vote. We could take a perspective that this ought to go to the legislative committee, but of course that could just refer it back and come back here. But I would submit to the Corporation Council that this requires a 3/4 vote under County Board Rule 7.7.
No, it doesn't.
He's looking into it.
I don't know.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Any resolution that is presented for the purpose of expressing support or opposition regarding any pending or proposed state or federal legislation shall require a 3/4 vote of the membership of the Board of Passage. And this asks for a budget decision, and that's a legislative law.
Well, it says state legislation, and the budget is, it's his budget, but it's ultimately legislation. I think it does require a 3/4 vote.
I request that we vote by iPad.
Okay, we'll vote by our, we'll have to change it to a 3/4 vote. But I called on him by mistake way earlier. That didn't make it. It did make it? Oh, okay. Well, is it of those present or the whole?
Pass no matter what.
Resolution number 053-9/2016, direct Chancellor Sanadine and the UW Extension Administration to re-examine the proposed next-generation model in the multi-county unit that includes Winnebago County to determine its impact on programming and outreach. Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like the group to support number 053-92016.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Haig.
Can you give a brief description of what generation, proposed next generation model is?
What the model is it's still fluid. As you remember, Supervisor Haig, we've been tasked with approximately $4.6 million cut in support, and among other things that it means for Winnebago County is they would like to put us together with in a 4-county consortium, Calumet, Outagamie, Wapaka, and Winnebago. And one of the things that we're concerned about is that for the efficiency and the ability to serve our customers, we've got to investigate that. We don't think it's among the best proposals.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, one abstention. Resolution 054-926, request the county executive to offer the original 2016 contract renewal to Impact Motorsports. Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for consideration and approval of Resolution 054-92016. I'm introducing this resolution at the request of an Oshkosh resident, businessman, and race fan, John Domel. I seek to rally supervisors, supporters of automobile racing in Winnebago County to settle this issue tonight, so that our county executive and Impact Motorsports can complete the contract to provide auto racing in Winnebago County for the next 3 years. It's the nexus of my proposal that automobile racing remain in Winnebago County. Short-term solutions are nice and ameliorate the situation, but they don't resolve it.
Supervisor Olson.
Pass, I'm sorry, no comment.
Supervisor Lautenschläger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make an amendment to this resolution. And basically, after listening to the county exec, under the where it therefore be it resolved, I would like to put by the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that it hereby request that the Winnebago County Executive grant a 1-year single race season lease to the Impact Motorsports based on the March 2016 lease offer, and to include whatever changes that are necessary to reflect that single race season, which is to terminate on September 30th, 2017. So basically, this would give them an extension of 1 more year.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. Supervisor Wingren on the amendment? Supervisor Wojciechowski on the amendment?
Well, is this something we have to do? Mark can just do it on his own? Is this something we have to pass? Because Mark can, if it's only 1 year extension, Mark can just do it without us having to pass this. So do we really have to make a change to the amendment, or add an amendment to the
I
resolution.
thought he said he wanted to add a year to that 1 year.
No, it's just a one-year extension, terminating September 30th of 2017.
So
it'd be
Mr.
for
Bodnar-
2017 season.
Well, first of all, one-year contract does not have to come to the board for approval. Secondly, this is just a request that he does this. You cannot make the county executive offer anybody a contract. You're getting into the executive branch of government, and it's really not the board's job. You can request that he do that. So I mean, you know, if you make it a one-year contract and he wants to do it, he can do it on his own. If you want a formal resolution that you're requesting that he does that, you can have this resolution there.
From Schneider? Larry, they didn't get you have to talk a little slower, they didn't get your whole...
I got it written down, you want it?
Okay, that would be good, thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first question I have is, at what rate?
At what rate? At whatever rate the March 2016, which I believe was the 22,000. That was the March 2016 offer.
Can anybody confirm that that's the dollar amount? The county executive is shaking his head yes. Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr.
This is
Chairman.
on the amendment yet.
Yes, sir, on the amendment.
I know, somebody else was asking to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I oppose this amendment, and the reason I oppose this amendment is that the original amendment is, the objective is to keep racing here, automobile racing, at the expo and fairgrounds. And if we're just going to give a one-year term, that's not going to do it, because there's too much other activity going on in alternatives. Now, the county executive does have the veto power to veto this resolution after it is passed by this board. And then it can come back to the board for a 2/3 vote, which would require him to fulfill it. Now, if you want racing to stay in Winnebago County, defeat this amendment and pass the resolution as submitted.
Supervisor Finch, on the amendment?
No.
Supervisor Keller, on the amendment?
Yes. I would just ask for clarity if the amendment can be read again, because I'm not sure I understand what the end result would be.
It's in the second now, or it's in the now therefore be it resolved by the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that it hereby requests that the Winnebago County Executive grant a one-year single race season lease to Import Motorsports based on the March 2016 lease offer, and to include whatever changes that are necessary to reflect that single race season, which is to terminate on September 30th, 2017.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the amendment, I would suggest Supervisor Eisen is correct in there's really no need for passing an amended resolution to tell the executive to offer a one-year contract to Impact Motorsports. Supervisor Eisen's desire, through the resolution that he wrote, is to extend Impact Motorsports for 3 years, not 1 year. And I would suggest that if we defeat the amended resolution, then we can also defeat Resolution 054 in its entirety in a second vote, which would back up what we did just a month ago in allowing the Park Department and the Park Committee to finish its job with Life Fest. We heard a very lengthy speech by the county executive tonight, which piggybacks on the same speech he gave a month prior. And I give him a great amount of respect for doing so, especially in the position he's at right now. And I think that the investment that Life Fest wants to make in these grounds, in the economic security, leaning towards the economic security of Winnebago County is very profound and substantial. And I suggest we defeat the amendment so we can defeat the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bender.
I guess I'd like to comment. I've only been on the board since May, but I thought the purpose of having committee was to do the due diligence, to do the research so that we can make a recommendation to this committee. But it seems like every time there's a board meeting, somebody wants to supersede the committee, and basically the committee's working hard. We're working as hard to find a solution to this as we possibly can. I guess I'd like to see it defeated and basically let us do our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused as to why people want to defeat the amendment to reduce it to 1 year. I'm going to vote yay for the amendment to limit it to a maximum of 1 year, and I encourage you all to do the same thing. I think we're jumping ahead if we think if we defeat this one, then we can defeat the next one. You might not defeat the second one. So I'd at least vote yay on this one, and then however you want to vote on the second one's up to you, but I'd at least vote yay on this one to accommodate what the county exec has asked for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Bender.
I agree with Mr. Roll. That's what my intention was, is to pass the amendment for the 1 year contract and let the committee have a year to work out the solution. Thank you.
I don't know, I didn't count Mr. Eisen, but go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suggest we vote by the iPad.
Okay, we'll vote by our little iPad. Vote aye if you approve. On the amendment. Pardon? You're voting on the amendment. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove.
Not working. I pressed
Yeah, press it wrong.
Powers is to be excused. What do you mean there's no excuse? I mean, I don't know.
Pardon? Okay, so it's not working?
So what did she vote?
She voted yes. No, it's not working.
The amendment passed. Now back to the amended resolution. Anybody want to? Supervisor Wingren, do you want to talk on the amended resolution?
Yes. I think. This is a very important resolution in the sense that it should be going through a committee, not just come out of the blue like this. I've heard a long time ago, someone once told me on this board, that someone I respect a great deal, that the art of politics is looking at a problem, misdiagnosing it, applying the wrong remedy. And I think that's what we're doing here. I think this is micromanaging to the max. The county executive can negotiate a one-year contract all by himself. We don't need to get involved. I think it puts the taxpayers at risk. Why would we tell the county executive to renew at a predetermined price? That seems to me putting him at an extreme disadvantage. So the right remedy, I think, would be, I move to table this now.
Second.
There was a second?
Yes.
Well, it's not debatable, and it can't be amended, and it takes a majority vote.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
No, you have to wait. It was moved and seconded to lay on the table, and that was what was done, and that's not debatable, and it's not.
It's an inappropriate resolution to the question.
I think so.
Tabling it is to put it to the end of the meeting after other legislation is considered. Postponing it to a time certain or postponing it indefinitely.
Well, Mr. Bodner, this isn't debatable, correct? To lay on the
It's
table now?
inappropriate. It's out of order.
You're out of order.
Okay, we'll vote by our iPad. Vote if you're in favor. If you don't want it to happen, then vote against it.
No.
It's out of order.
No, we're voting yes.
It's inappropriate.
Yes. You're voting yes.
What exactly are we voting for?
Table indefinitely. Goes away. No, not postpone. Just get rid of it. Yes.
Can't do that.
Yes, you can.
So how many people are here? I mean, how many? 5? So what do we need? We need 18? Has everybody voted?
Got a prediction before we vote?
Supervisor Warnke, you have to vote.
Mike Brooks hasn't voted.
I don't have to vote.
So I'm going to make him absent.
Yeah.
You want to tell him?
No, he said he wasn't going to vote. I mean, I don't know, what's the,
Well, I have to make him absent so I can reveal the vote.
make him absent then. So who else did, who?
Could you tell him I'm making him absent so I can...
They're making you absent, Paul, saying you don't want to vote.
This is a
I'm just explaining why. It's not debatable.
The proper Robert Rules of Order motion is to postpone indefinitely.
That's what we did.
Table is not the appropriate solution.
Okay, go ahead, take the
I
vote.
move to table indefinitely. There we go.
That is passed.
21, what is it? 21?
Ordinance number 0559, 2016 has been pulled.
My work here is...
Amend section Ordinance number 056-9/2016, amends section 5.05 of General Code of Winnebago County, fees of sheriff's fees for civil process and travel-related costs. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of ordinance 569/2016.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Supervisor Vogel. Who abstained? Chuck abstained.
No, withdrew it. You said right at the beginning of the meeting.
Supervisor Vogel.
Yeah.
You adjourn.
I'm here to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we adjourn until Tuesday, October 18th.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I would, but I didn't.